building the ultimate zero RB team for the 2024 fantasy football season. That is what we're going to do today on RotoViz Overtime. Myself, along with Mr. Zero RB Shawn Siegele, are going to build a team, we hope, in the FFPC Best Ball Tournament that will enable us to cash in that top prize, Shawn, off $300,000. So that is what we are doing today. The $125 buy-in. We are drafting from the 8th slot. We are going to be live on the clock, talking through the player selections, and hopefully, as we mentioned, constructing an absolute juggernaut. Shawn released the 3-parter Zero RB top 15 list over the last week. We are going to try and get as many of those names on to this roster as we can, Shawn. So we're one pick away. I'm excited for this draft. Hopefully you're excited too. How do you want to take the direction as we see Saquon Barkley go off the board at number 7? Shawn, we have a range of options here. What's whetting your appetite as we're on the clock?
Yeah, is it too early to start taking those zero RB running backs? We don't want to get this draft thrown out, Colm, especially thrown out and then find out that team would have won with those zero RB guys early. No, Amon-Ra, Justin Jefferson. I was going to float Garrett Wilson. The other thing we're going to try and do in today's draft is hit as many of the priority targets as possible. Garrett Wilson comes in as the first priority target, but that's assuming you're stuck in a range where you need to pick him. Colm, you have a preference? Amon-Ra, Justin Jefferson?
I think we'll go Amon-Ra. I have more Jefferson than Amon-Ra throughout the course of the season so far. So I'm just trying to balance that out. I think we were left, Shawn, with a decision I did not think that we were going to have to decide between. We didn't even decide, Shawn, between adding Garrett Wilson to the roster. So this is an interesting start, which feels like it could be a fun room when we set up these drafts. Sometimes goes by ADP. Sometimes there's lots of swings in different directions. So to see the draft start off for people who are listening in, it was Breece Hall at the 101, CMC, then CeeDee Lamb, who has just agreed his new contract extension with the Dallas Cowboys. We get Tyreek Hill, Bijan Robinson, Jamar Chase, Saquon Barkley. Then we take St. Brown, and then Justin Jefferson has just gone off to the 9 drafter. I have to say, Shawn, 4 RBs through those opening 7 picks is nice to see when you're not picking in those top couple of picks. Because I mentioned to you when we drew the 8th slot before this kicked off, I was like, not the worst spot, but also not the best spot. But what can make it the best spot is you get that pick a little bit earlier in round 2 with a potential, falling target. And then you also get the opportunity, if one of those names fall, to get him at 8. And in this draft, we had a multitude of options. So I am excited to get St. Brown there. Was there an inkling for you to even, go the Garrett Wilson route? I know he's somebody that you have huge hopes for, but it feels a little hard to still, make that jump and take him over the likes of St. Brown and Jefferson. Or how are you feeling when the draft approaches and those picks are all on the board as to how you want to play it?
Yeah, I don't necessarily have a problem moving him up there. It's mostly a matter of balancing the exposure a little bit. At the $125 level, that becomes a little bit less of an
I did think that too, yeah.
So we could have gone that way. I think that he's going to score a ton of points. Amon-Ra is fun because in this format, Deebo Samuel tends to come back in that general vicinity in round 3. You have George Kittle and Brandon Ayuk in round 4. You can build out that Detroit-San Francisco game at good prices. That for me is a little bit of a tiebreaker when we think about where the ultimate upside is going to be. Detroit has that early week 5 by the 49ers, one of only 2 teams in week 9, and we know we are not likely to be targeting too many players off of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So that frees things up in a little bit in a way that the Vikings, where they share with the Dolphins, we love Jalen Waddle, with the Chiefs, obviously got multiple chances there, and then the Rams, where you might get a good price on Cooper Kupp. Now, in this, and a little bit of a contrast maybe to some other formats, he is going as the wide receiver 12. You're not going to get any type of crazy value on him. We would have to take him here early in 2, probably. That maybe not the way to go. Colm, our next choice will probably focus around selecting or passing on a tight end.
Mm-hmm.
Have Trey McBride in the queue. We tend to go that direction a lot. I love that. Would you be tempted for Jonathan Taylor or Jahmyr Gibbs? Or especially when we're going to build out this 0 RB juggernaut, the crucial thing here is to hit on the tight end.
Yeah, what I'm hoping is Trey McBride doesn't go off the board on this pick, Shawn, to open the door for us on it. It's hard to, build out the ultimate 0 RB running or 0 RB roster when we take a running back in round 2. There is some interesting options. Taylor going, past ADP, usually in that 11, 12 range. And then we do see Gibbs, who has, somebody we took in the FFPC main event along with Trey McBride, but he does go at that point. So this opens the door here, Shawn, I think, for McBride being the clear pick that I would like to take. So the other names, just for people looking in the queue, Harrison, London, Kyron Williams, Devon Aichan, and then we get Hunter Henry down to Dalton Kincaid. I think that looking at, we're talking priority targets at this point of the draft. Trey McBride, Sam Laporta have been two of my priority targets all offseason. In this draft, Travis Kelce did go at 12, then Sam Laporta went at the 201. We get Laporta then at the McBride at the 205. But he is a clear priority target when it gets to that range. And if he goes, it's a little bit tricky then to go with unless you go Marvin Harrison would be the next one, but to go with a non-running back pick. A lot of the other best picks at that point would be, Kyren Williams, Jonathan Taylor was available, and then Aichan as well. So that area, the mid-second round, feels like some very strong hero RB draft selections could be there. But Shawn, Trey McBride, I assume, still one of your main priorities for Bills in the 2024 season.
He is. He is the second name on that list of the 24 priority targets for this season, specifically in redraft, that exercise. But we have a lot of crossover, especially this early in the Fantasy Pros versus the main event versus the BBT and all of those FFPC contests. Trey McBride, strong target here in the second round.
Yeah, and Shawn, obviously did a list of priority targets. I don't know, Shawn, probably like 8 to 12 weeks ago that was up on rotoviz.com, but he has updated that on the site. And I actually got a couple of DMs, and I was wondering if Shawn had somehow hacked into my Twitter account to read these DMs that were like, is Shawn going to update, that priorities list, over the next couple of weeks? And I didn't even get a chance to reach out to Shawn about it. And within like a couple of hours, the two people replied to say, perfect, updated. And I think Shawn, I might have got a slight bit of credit for it, but I had nothing to do with it. Shawn had these ones in the works, ready to publish. So anyone that's interested in that as well, check it up on RotoViz. We may even have some content coming this week that touches on some of the elements of that, but sets you up perfect for any of your drafts here as we really rapidly approach the start of the season, as it is really and truly into the single digit weeks away, Shawn, which is hard to believe at this point. We are looking into round 3. You did mention Deebo Samuel being an interesting name that would certainly fit in with the Amon-Ra St. Brown part of things with the Lions and the 49ers. Another player who's very, very interesting that goes in that range would be Jalen Waddle, but we also get Malik Neighbors. So I feel like, usually when we're moving into this third round range, unless it's a case that you miss out completely, which I find is not usually the case. And I watch this draft be the case where we get completely wiped out of some of our favorite picks here. But there is a number of names that generally get back to you in that mid to late third, which are again, priority players. I didn't even mention Nico Collins, who would kind of come into that category. There's a chance there's a falling Cooper Kupp if that was to occur. And then you start to even have some fallback options like a Devonta Smith, Kyle Pitts is somebody, if you don't have your tight end, would be a priority in that range. Who are you looking to land in this third round?
Malik Neighbors would be absolutely fantastic. It seems like his ceiling right now matches almost anyone outside of those first round wide receivers column. He would again be that next priority target option as we work through here. One of the things you mentioned, people messaging you, I love that. You can certainly take full credit. Colm, as much as you do for me and for us. Anytime there is any opportunity to take credit, go ahead and do that. We also have the home league version up. I know we have some listeners who are like, yeah, great. I love the targets. But what I really want to do is meet my friends, my coworkers, my cousins, my in-laws, my college roommate. That list.
They're the leagues that really matter, Shawn.
Yeah, right. So that list is up there as well. Colm, the other thing that is kind of fun, when I went back through, this is always interesting. You've got to double check yourself and make sure that, we have an evidence-based approach. We feel very strongly it's going to work. The history is in our favor. But as we get ready to make this selection, I want to note the 2023 priority targets list, which, Colm, you and I used to finish in the money in the main event. Amon-Ra, St. Brown, CeeDee Lamb, Jahmyr Gibbs, Keenan Allen, Breece Hall, Brandon Ayuk, Sam Laporta, Rashee Rice, Devon Achane. Those are some of the biggest winners, and they were featured pretty heavily on our team. So I enjoyed that aspect.
Yeah, awesome. And I would expect, Shawn, that with the track record that you have, I would guess that most of these priorities are going to end up in a similar boat. We are fortunate enough, Shawn, we have a decision here between Deebo and Waddle. They were the two names I kind of pitched earlier. The other names have since been wiped out. This feels pretty clearly to me to be a Deebo Samuel pick here. Have you any other names that you want to highlight?
No, let's go that route.
Interesting as well. Somebody we haven't been targeting this season at all, and really for the last couple of seasons, and that is Devonta Adams. He's usually a late second round pick, an early third round pick in this, but he is still on the board at this point. But to get those two wide receivers in St. Brown and Deebo Samuel, along with Trey McBride, feels like we're kind of fortunate through those opening 3 rounds. We've got 3 targets and priorities at that we would like to add to this roster. Obviously, Deebo is somebody I like to get on as many teams as possible, but when you have an Amon-Ra St. Brown team to pair up with that week 17 match for the big money round here, obviously the final of this contest where the top prize is $300,000, a nice little weighted element to add in there. Also, on the return of that, the other name, Shawn, that I'd be looking to target here would be now into the Devonta Smith area of things. Then you would be looking at, you mentioned Ayuk earlier. I would kind of prefer to go with Kittle if he was there as a secondary option. But when we're looking down into the next kind of 12 or so picks of ADP, before you get into the Rashee Rice, Stefon Diggs territory, maybe you want to move them up into this zone. Have you a clear priority, 5 picks away that we're looking to get around? Waddle did go 1 pick after us, then Evan Ingram, then Mike Evans. Have you anyone that you're really hoping that sneaks back around to us?
Well, I have the RotoViz ADP tool open and looking at the last several days. Colm, we're in this range where, as you mentioned, Smith might come back around. It's the DK Metcalf range. I'm much more comfortable with that as we get a big training camp from him, from Geno, from the offense in general in terms of what the vibes are there. I do think that Rashee Rice is probably the other name in that area. You and I might feel comfortable targeting Xavier Worthy in round 5 instead of round 6, but that costs you potentially a name like Tank Dell, Zay Flowers, T. Higgins. I think those are the critical choices that we have to make as we navigate this next pick.
Yeah, and hopefully, again, we'll have those choices. We've been fortunate so far that we've had a couple of options. Since I last mentioned the players taking Devonta Adams, Josh Jacobs, James Cook, have all gone off the board, so we're 2 picks away. We are going to have a multitude of options here, Shawn, to pick from. So it would be interesting to pull up and get Rashee Rice at this point. I do really like adding that second elite tight end in George Kittle to this roster, but it's not essential, but it would free us up, I think, flexibility-wise for tight ends as we play through the rest of this draft. And then, like wide receiver-wise, you mentioned DK Metcalf, but it would kind of be between Devonta Smith and Rashee Rice if we go the receiver right at this particular point of the draft. And I'm kind of waiting here to see who does sneak through. You mentioned Worthy. He's somebody in drafts as well as Rice, who, when I've been drafting over the last week, like, again, you can get them in a wide range of areas, and a lot of the time it's a case that they are not falling to where you would like to. As Shawn, I say that, Rashee Rice does go 2 picks ahead of us. So it is a case from draft to draft. I am seeing those guys get pulled way up, and I don't expect that to slow down over the next week. And it is a case of having to be aggressive and then go and get them. So he's not there. George Kittle goes. For me, I'd probably be looking here at the Devonta Smith pick, but he also week 5 along with the Lions in terms of bye weeks. Do you want to go with him? The other position would be quarterback, but I'm looking to push quarterback here. So it's probably Diggs or Smith at this pick, and I'd probably lean towards Smith.
Yeah, the question is whether or not Tank Dell would get back to us. Would we want him at that pick? In round 6, you're looking at Brock Bowers and Xavier Worthy. And if both of those guys are gone, which they would be just barely if the draft stuck very closely to ADP, then you have a big tier break and you might reach all the way down to pick Jaden Reed. I'll let you make this one.
Well, I'll take Smith unless you want to veto that with 8 seconds to go.
So we do take Devonta Smith. I've ended up getting a lot of him recently. A little surprised that he is not a trendy play right now, in that he's very clearly the best way to play the Philadelphia Eagles offense. He's had a fantastic camp. He's a rising player, sort of in that peak age range. And not that we want to think of it in those terms exactly. And Blair Andrews has had a lot of fantastic research on that. But I think when you have a player as productive, as athletic as Devonta Smith, and you have the potential for that secondary leap if the offense moves back into the range where it should be. The way that I'm thinking about Philadelphia, and again, this can always be wrong, but we're trying to get the most value that we can, squeeze the most out of it, get the most bang for our buck. You take A.J. Brown in the first round, and what he can do from that point, especially in an offense with a hybrid QB, is to hit in that range where he's being priced. You think about someone like a Dallas Goedert who's had injury issues and probably isn't a great, I don't say great fit. They obviously want to involve the tight end more, and yet he is not a guy who necessarily separates from a talent perspective in the same way. Obviously, Jalen Hurts is already priced up as an elite QB. He needs to not only do what he's done, but not have the poor back half of the season that he had last year in order to justify that price. If those things work out, then the likelihood is that Devonta Smith also benefits. And if he benefits, he will actually be a winner at his price. So again, you can have individual things happen that defeat that method of thinking through a team. But if you're thinking through all of the teams through that type of lens, you're going to wring more value out of your drafts than if you simply take the trendy players, or you take A.J. Brown at his spot because it's ADP, or you take the elite quarterback because you want an elite quarterback. Those are narrower ways to play it, which again doesn't mean they couldn't work on an individual team, but draft to draft, season to season, we get more if we're looking for a way to play a team like the Eagles who could bounce back, but who's the biggest beneficiary?
Yeah. And that is going to be like, but the other part is like the Eagles may just continue to do what they've done and be a dominant offense and be able to work that through the 2 wide receivers again this season. But I think when you get into the mid 4th round, and you do have an interesting group here. Like in this round so far, the wide receivers were Rashee Rice, Devonta Smith, DK Metcalf, DJ Moore, Brandon Ayuk. There's lots of, similar in terms of the outcomes in a positive or a regressing way, I think, from that group in general. But I still like to go with the Smith route with that. The one that you were talking about in Rashee Rice, who went 2 picks earlier, I think would be one of the players I'd be willing to take the risk on over Smith in that range. I'm looking to draft him over DJ Moore, over DK Metcalf, and over Brandon Ayuk. So with that all in mind, I'm happy to take him at that particular point. The other challenges, Shawn, that we run into, you mentioned some of the players that may get back or may not get back. There is for me like a tier there with Diggs, Flowers, Dell, and Higgins that I would hope all come true. Sorry, with Worthy in that group, but he is usually going just a little bit later than those other names. So between them, Brock Bowers, I'm quite hopeful that one of them certainly making it to this spot in 6. Again, I hope I don't curse the draft that we're doing, but that is the way I'm looking at it here. So we'll see if it plays out as favorably as I'm hoping it will. We have an interesting draft developing though, Shawn. We have a couple of teams that have 2 running backs so far through this point of the draft. 4 teams, in fact. So some of them, 2 of those with quarterback each as well. So there's a couple of teams building in similar ways and both running back heavy and avoiding the running back position. So we'll see how that plays out as well when it gets to those 0 RB rounds for us to target. I did get a couple of questions and comments that came in on some of the recent videos where, me and Connor drafted Brock Bowers, and then you and Ben drafted Brock Bowers on a recent draft. And obviously there's been some reports with him, injury-wise. Any concerns with that heading towards the season, or, thinking that it's more just a thing where they're being precautious as they're saying they are?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the most likely thing. But you certainly, anytime someone is not practicing, yeah, you do have some concerns, right? You'd prefer your guy to be in such fantastic physical health right now before the season has even started that the first play of week 1, he is the designed target. He catches the ball, he breaks 3 or 4 tackles, he runs for 30 yards, and you're thinking, I'm off to the races. It's not nearly as good to be in a situation where the player is at 60 to 70% of the snaps they would normally be at. And we wouldn't expect them to play 100% of the snaps anyway. So whatever they're going to come out with as the default, if they're not to that level and they're building slowly into it, it does cost you. And I don't think that we want to ignore that completely. Part of the issue with Brock Bowers has simply been that his price, even though there's hope in it, even though there's some projection in it, we don't believe that you should ignore the collegiate production and what that bodes when you think about the transition to the NFL. So from that perspective, there's not as much hope and projection, I think, as it might seem like on the surface. Where he goes, you have a lot of room to outperform, but anytime that the injury is relevant, then your margin is getting decreased a little bit. And so when we miss on him like we did in this draft, it doesn't bother me as much as it might otherwise, considering how much exposure we have and the fact that there is that tiny red flag.
Yeah, so he did actually go a couple of picks before us, 3 picks, in fact. There was a fall-in Patrick Mahomes, who I was going to ask Shawn about, but he did go 1 pick before us. So we are on the clock with the options between Diggs, Flowers, Dell, and Worthy. For me here, Worthy would be my priority. I'll ask Shawn then as to what he wants to do. I'm kind of hoping that we could possibly get Worthy and then maybe one of those other names sneak back to us. What would you like to do here?
Well, I mean, by ADP, it's much more likely that Worthy comes back than any of the other guys. We've gotten a massive discount on Diggs.
Yeah.
It seems like it probably makes sense to take that.
Okay. I know Diggs is one of your boys this season. For the listeners out there, does he make the priorities list in the updated version?
He does.
Yeah, I was kind of setting up there for a little plug for the article as well. So, Shawn, I know you said by ADP. The reason I said that, probably take Worthy there is there's 8 picks to go before it gets back to us. I have fears here that he's not making it back. If he makes it back, we are in a dream scenario here. We would then be up to Amon-Ra, St. Brown, Trey McBride, Deebo, Devonta Smith, Stefon Diggs, and Xavier Worthy. That would be quite the run here in this draft. So we'll see if we can sneak it through. You did mention, I often talk about on these drafts the ADPQ on the platform you're playing, in this case the FFPC, and then having it pulled up on RotoViz with the ability to filter it by the date range. So by the date range, Shawn, he is going at the 604. Brock Bowers is going at the 603, so he did go earlier in this draft. I mentioned Rashee Rice earlier. He went about 8 picks ahead of ADP. But as you look at the site, the window has not yet shown Xavier Worthy. He's a couple of picks down, so maybe he does sneak through. But I think if we get any of those other names through as well would be nice. Anyone in this range that becomes a kind of a secondary option for you? I know we like to try and push quarterback around the turn, see if we can get them maybe at that little bit of a discount, but CJ Stroud would fall into this range now that you have a Stefon Diggs would fit into it. then you mentioned earlier about, Jaden Reed. You'd be starting to go down into that Jaden Reed territory. You might even see a Keenan Allen at that point. Where are you looking if all our names were moved here? And as we go, just update people. It's Joe Mixon, James Conner, Alvin Kamara that have gone off since our pick. So that's setting up quite favorably for us. George Pickens has just gone off the board. So there's 4 picks to us, Shawn. We have 4 names in the queue. Do you want to let the listeners know who the 4th name you've added to the queue is?
Yeah, I've got David Njoku in there. He has an ADP right in this range. He would be another guy where the team is suggesting that he's got a little bit of that camp soreness. But his numbers, and again, I did a full piece on Njoku working through the ramifications as it relates to Joe Flacco, as it relates to Deshaun Watson. You've got some real concerns about Deshaun Watson being the quarterback and playing this year at this point, and yet
I'd rather get Jameis Winston.
Yeah, I mean, that would be the best for him anyway. So we think about it from that perspective, and I think you'd have to be fired up. Colm, this has been fantastic.
Talking about the best for him, the best for us has been this 7-pick stretch has been quite beautiful.
So Zay Flowers, Tank Dell, Xavier Worthy, all 3 of them are still here as we are 1 pick away.
Yeah, so this is I owe Shawn an apology after that Diggs selection, saying that he, these guys mightn't get back. We're going to get at least 2 of them back, maybe 3 of them back. And that would also have a backup with Njoku after that conversation. Zay Flowers does go. So that means it's between Dell and Worthy, Shawn, for me here, leaning towards Worthy, but happy to go with the second Texan if that's the way you want to play it. I think I would lean into Worthy here. Lean into Worthy.
You want to get...
I'm trying to tell you, Shawn, that I would lean into Worthy. If you're interested, Shawn, at all, I think I would lean towards Worthy here.
You're leaning toward the player you wanted me to draft the last round.
Yeah.
Colm, can I get you to say today?
If I was leaning any further, Shawn, I would have fell over, I think, is what would have happened there.
We all do have images of the 6'6" Colm Kelly falling out of his chair, breaking everything in his football shrine, which would be certainly a disappointment to us, the family, fantasy football fans everywhere. We do take Xavier Worthy. I want to hear you say on overtime that Xavier Worthy is going to outscore at least one of Marvin Harrison and Malik Neighbors.
Yeah, that's an interesting angle to put it. I think that those 3 names, and I would say that Neighbors and Worthy probably will be ahead of Harrison and ADP when it gets next season. But I think and obviously Neighbors and Harrison are already 2nd and 3rd round picks. I think they're all 1-2 turn picks when we're drafting this time next year. I thought you were going to ask me, could I guarantee that he was going to outscore Rashee Rice, who at this point last year was one of our favorite rookies to draft. I just think that, Shawn, your Kansas City Chiefs they're going to have just so much riches at the wide receiver position that, it's going to be pretty much impossible to stop Patrick Mahomes in that offense this season. And it's going to be a fun ride for you as a Chiefs fan. Worthy has the range of outcomes to, go in there and have the most exciting rookie season for a wide receiver of all time. That's where I'll set the bar at, Shawn. How do you feel about that?
Anytime we get all time,
is that setting the bar too high?
Well,
is that hyperbole?
We're just coming off of a season where Puka Nacua was.
Puka Nacua is playing with Matthew Stafford for all the arm talent that he has, and I know they get to play in a dome. There's times of the season where I feel like his elbow and his other joints are probably hanging on by like a small piece of like rubber band.
So you're going with Worthy there. I like it. We have Colm. Unfortunately, what happened was that Tank Dell then fell to the team that had selected Brock Bowers. That team has a Bijan Robinson, Marvin Harrison, Malik Neighbors, DJ Moore, Brock Bowers, Tank Dell start. Leaning in somewhat heavily to the rookies with 3 of them in the first 5 picks. But that is a fantastic team. In the early going, that's the squad I would be looking at as our stiffest competitor. Saying that, having not looked that carefully at the other teams. So anyone who is in this draft and listening, not meant as a criticism to the others.
Yeah, as we look
I
at
know
Sean,
that other people participating, like these guys don't have a running back yet. They're the ones competing for the toilet bowl.
yeah. So we will see like team 2 as well as a Christian McCaffrey team with Drake London, Cooper Kupp, Brandon Ayuk, Michael Pittman. They do get that discount on Njoku, almost a full round of ADP discount on that. I do think looking around the entire draft, as I mentioned, other teams who maybe were taking similar approaches as the draft was starting to progress there. Team 10 did go with James Conner in that last round to get their first running back. I think, Shawn, looking around this entire room, it's going to be interesting to see how the draft plays out because there's like a wide range of movement in the first, six rounds that doesn't set it up to give you a definitive answer as to how they may try and play the rest of this round or the rest of this draft in general. But what I can say is I'm very pleased with where we are at this particular moment in time. So we have 5 wide receivers through 6. We're trying to make sure we have 5 through 7. We have Trey McBride as well. Would have been nice to get another tight end probably in before this, David Njoku pick where, after him and Brock Bowers, I think it changes the dynamics of the tight end position a little bit. But, you can't really be like, I wish I had a second elite tight end and then be like, well, we got, those 5 wide receivers on board the roster. So we are moving into the 7th and looking at where players go, like that James Conner pick, for example, was a couple of picks ahead of ADP. Not much, but a little bit. But we're going to see how the running back position maybe now starts to get ate up by some of the teams. We do have the team in 3 that got CeeDee Lamb. That is a Kyron Williams team with Travis Etienne, Jalen Hurts, Jake Ferguson, David Montgomery, and Ramondre Stevenson. So they're up to 4 running backs through those 7 picks, just the 1 wide receiver. So again, it's going to be interesting to see the dynamics of how the draft plays out from some of the different teams. But they're kind of almost the polar opposite to the roster that we've built so far. So it'll be cool maybe to contrast those at the end of the draft. Jaden Reed went to that Tank Dell drafter, Shawn, that you mentioned, the team that you really like. That is a pretty awesome start for them from the 5 spot. I just think that it's fantastic. If I'm being honest, I hope they make decisions now over the next 10 rounds that destroy that roster for them. So we are 3 picks away. We have CJ Stroud in the queue as an option. I know that number 1 on that Zero RB list, Shawn, could be coming up in this particular range. Maybe we try and squeeze him around the turn. Is there any wide receivers here that you would want ahead of the wide receiver cliff if it wasn't a CJ Stroud pick that you'd be looking to get at this point over Said, Mr. Zero RB number 1, and CJ Stroud, who, as I mentioned, with that last pick, we'd be trying to push around the corner to get some more value on him. We have been able to do that. We get him back. I think it'll be a fun add in here. The other player that I'd probably go and talk about at wide receiver did just go off the board. That was Christian Watson. So Adunze would be there if you want to go that direction potentially. Brian Thomas. What are you thinking here? We're on the clock, 35 seconds to go.
Yeah, I'm very happy to go with your preference. Javonte Williams maybe doesn't make it back. He's a very compelling pick here. Colm, I try and push CJ Stroud in every draft, and yet I have an absolute ton. He does make sense for this team. Those are probably the 2 names, with Brian Thomas a possibility as well.
Yeah, I think we go. I would go Stroud because I think that it opens up a wide range of options for you now as the draft progresses. That you could even do a 2 QB build if you wanted to save roster spots. Myself and Connor O'Driscoll did a number of drafts in this recently that have come out on. Some of them were slow draft. We did a couple of live ones that we recorded. But CJ Stroud and getting some more of those quarterbacks that we feel should really be on that truly elite tier. Like if we look at this draft, we get Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen all go in the 4th round. Mahomes then did fall a little bit, went in the mid-5th. I feel like he should be in that tier of quarterback. So when you get him then at an additional round discount from where he would normally be going, he really should be a factor in your conversation, at that worthy pick. So to push him around and get him there at that point, I think is a very easy click. So it does change the dynamics. The other part is, obviously we're talking about the Zero RB list, Shawn, but there is 15 names on that list. That doesn't necessarily mean that you have to get the very first one at the very first opportunity. Now, as I say that player goes off the board, which is obviously a stinger. But I think there's a number of running back options as you move through the draft that you can fill in. I don't think there's another true CJ Stroud level mispriced quarterback in this kind of area of the draft. So it got a little bit flat there. It was either running back or the QB. We take the QB. Since that, DeAndre Swift went, Javonte Williams went, Kyler Murray, and now Najee Harris. Shawn, somebody I've seen consistently fall in drafts over the last week is Raheem Mostert. Each time I'm doing a draft, I have to go in and check any update on Raheem Mostert, any injury news, what's happening with Raheem Mostert, why is he falling, multiple rounds, sometimes up to 2 rounds past ADP. Can you tell me any reason why it may not happen in this draft, but that he continues to fall down here? Do you think it's just, concerns with his age, being a veteran, and any other reasons that he may be falling in these drafts?
I think in part it's got to be that Jalen Wright is that good. And
okay.
He's going to get squeezed a little bit on the work, if not in the first month, then as the season progresses. I do think he becomes a little bit of a tricky pick there when you can either get the rising superstar in Achane, or you can simply wait a little bit longer and take Wright. That part, I think, is fairly compelling. Colm, as we move into round 8 here, one of the things I also want to mention for anybody who is wanting to play this tournament over the next week, and you certainly should, it's so much fun. The Best Ball Tournament Strategy Guide is also up on the site. You can look at my author archive and find that. We have been executing the recommendations from that. And again, there are no guarantees, but you can strongly tilt or heavily tilt the contest and the league in your favor when you follow the recommendations there. Recommendations that have historically worked, and we have reason to believe will probably work even a little bit better with the 2024 ADP environment. Colm, Roma Dunze goes 1 pick ahead of us there. That would have been a really interesting way to play it, but
wasn't the player I wanted.
Brian Thomas might have more ability to.
You want another wide receiver? The name I would pitch is Chase Brown, but are you feeling like you want to go and get Brian Thomas? I think there's a chance when you're at this point. I don't think he does get back to us. There's a chance by ADP Thomas would sneak back through.
Okay, it's time to dip into the running backs. Colin, did you have any interest in Jaden Daniels there?
I didn't, based on that we had been able to get CJ Stroud. And I think when I get Stroud, I'm usually looking to try and move down further quarterback in general, unless I get that kind of a price on Stroud. And with that in mind, I'm trying to push it a little bit. And when we're talking about pushing it, we've seen QB in this draft a little bit sporadic in terms of, I mentioned the group that went in round 4 and round 5. And as I say, that Shawn Daniels went off the board. I was going to say there's a chance that we see somebody like a Daniels make his way back through, because on the board at that moment we had Burrow, Prescott, Jordan Love along with Daniels. So I was thinking that maybe QB would fall a little bit again. So I know, Shawn, we both like Daniels, and that would have been a nice fit. After getting Stroud, I if I didn't have Stroud, I think I would be much more open to it.
Brian Thomas was the very next pick after we selected Chase Brown. Tyjae Spears
haven't managed this very well.
Goes, no, that's not the case at all. My thing with Chase Brown at this point is that I wouldn't put myself at the head of this, but I feel like there is someone out there in the robes and with the pipe and with like the true magic, and that person is walking through the desert or some other exotic locale, and people are following in droves, and the entire experience, the entire movement is the draft Chase Brown on every team movement. Oh, my Chase Brown exposure is so high that even though I think he's
what you're telling me pick, is
I'm starting to get nervous, right? Because at a certain point, if things do go wrong, they're going to go wrong for a lot of teams.
Shawn, I have to balance out my Nick Chubb exposure now that he's going to miss the first 4 weeks of the season with better running backs than Nick Chubb who are available. So we have to get some shit.
You don't have any Nick Chubb exposure.
I have a lot. The part that I'm looking at with Chase Brown is there was a lot of times where I was looking throughout the draft season to be like, I'm doing a bunch of drafts. Eventually, there's going to be these drafts where I'm getting them at ADP or below ADP. And what was happening in every draft is somebody else just took him before I had the opportunity. So I'm not as high in terms of exposure on Brown as I would like. But when we start off a team like this with the 5 wide receivers, the elite tight end, get the discount on the elite quarterback, I think adding, one of those available options that we have at the high end of, our zero RB priority targets is a smart play to do there. And the way this draft had gone, it had been quite heavy at running back, and that could continue here as we move forward. So I was kind of wondering as to how many of them may get removed. But I was also thinking of the second name that I would like to add to this roster at running back, and we will talk about him if he does go before it gets back. But he is somebody who's also on that kind of injury list at the moment. And he is somebody I like to try and add to rosters where I kind of have already somebody who we can expect those early season points from. And I think Chase Brown gives us that. I think that's another area where Javonte Williams, if you're drafting him, gives you that to add some of these names. And the name when I'm talking about injured players, this one isn't Nick Chubb. It is a different running back. So we'll see if it gets back to us there. Shawn, I thought Brian Thomas may have worked his way towards us, but that obviously was not the case at all. He went one pick after, as you mentioned. So Daniels and Thomas, both players that I really like getting on rosters, but just in this team, I felt that Chase Brown was the way to go. Would you have rather now, in hindsight, take Thomas over Brown? And the other one that I was going to ask you is, you mentioned if I had interest in Daniels. I generally assume when you ask a question like that, that means that you had a lot of interest in him at that pick. Were you thinking there, get those two and be completely done at QB?
Yes, but this is a team that really needs to have Brock Purdy or Jared Goff as the second quarterback. You can still definitely go with just the two there. I always want to keep Jaden Daniels in mind because I think he's got a shot to be the overall QB1, or let's say the overall QB1 for the second half, which is where all the money will be. Of course, you have to get there. So, Colm, we're going to try and build a team over the second half of this draft that allows us to make that tournament, to be live for the big money at the end. We're moving into a little bit of a flat portion of the draft, and that's no surprise. A lot of players are off the board.
Yeah, there's a flatter area. So some of the players I've been looking at here, and talked about quarterback Joe Burrow did get drafted. Interestingly, Shawn, that Joe Burrow drafter, and I'm kind of puzzled as to why this happened, took Joe Burrow with Dak Prescott available. That's the team I mentioned that had CeeDee Lamb, Jake Ferguson, and Jalen Hurts. So they were kind of building out that Eagles game a bit. I'm surprised they took Burrow over Prescott, but obviously that's not, they probably don't care what my thoughts are on it. We're one pick away, but the running back that I was talking about was Jonathan Brooks. I'm going to see if Shawn's going to be interested in drafting him. You mentioned Brock Purdy. I'd be hoping to get him around the corner here. I wouldn't be drafting him at this spot over the likes of Jordan Addison, who I'm open to if that's a direction that you would like to go to at wide receiver. TJ Hawkinson would be an interesting addition to the roster as a secondary tight end to Trey McBride. So it is a flat area, Shawn, but I feel like there's a few options here that I really like. And if we could come away with two of those options, I would be really pleased with it. How are you feeling here at this turn? Like, I think that I'm leaning that you probably want to get Jordan Addison. Again, I think he may be a player that comes back through, but I've been wrong.
Yeah, I think he'll come back. And if he doesn't, again, he's a player where his price has been so flagrantly absurd that we have a lot. The reason it's so absurd is that there are red flags. And so you don't want to act like you can wave those away just because you're getting a good price on it. You could still lose because of the red flags, and the price doesn't help you that much at all. Something you want to manage, not from a fear perspective as you're drafting an individual team, but certainly as you're putting your portfolio together, we want to get as good of prices as we can on him. Jonathan Brooks, very controversial. He does seem like he could be a top 10 running back over the course of the second half of the year. I always like to mention that Jake Bose had a fantastic article out recently talking about zero percentage and how much it dings you to have guys in your lineup who aren't scoring. So we want to balance those two things. Love Jonathon Brooks for a redraft where you just can wait until he is back and ready to go. But even in this format, and certainly at this price, I mean, you can take a month and he is still going to reward you. I know that there is potentially some concern that if you do it on a 0 RB team, where are you going to get your points? You had sort of alluded to that, but also mentioned that was one of the reasons why you liked Chase Brown, because he gives you a little bit of that foundation back.
I think I'm more reluctant in rosters where I've passed on Chase Brown to this point, or not Chase Brown specifically, but if I'm looking at my first running back, I'm not certain as to what you can put behind that. So to have a little bit of the insurance, to cover and try and fill in with what you can get here now moving forward in the following rounds is what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, so I think you set that up for us perfectly. We also then have the flexibility as we come back through in round 10 to take either Purdy or Jared Goff if we want. Again, the QBs have not necessarily been that expensive in this draft, so I wouldn't be surprised at all if we were able to push him or one of those two players to us in round 11. That would open the door to take Addison if he is there. Do you have a way that you like to play that element of it?
So I'm just having a look through. The Ayuk drafter has drafted Anthony Richardson, but he also is Ayuk and Christian McCaffrey. So maybe that is a team that looks to get him. Then we obviously have Amon-Ra St. Brown, but we are protected with the Sam Laporta drafter being at that point. So the only thing that could happen is the Lamar Jackson drafter who took Jameson Williams could take Goff, and we could miss out on both of them. But I'm willing to risk that second quarterback position now that we have CJ Stroud. So I would be looking to push it here if you want to go with Addison. And Shawn has made the click before I've finished the comment.
I could tell what you were saying there. Jordan Addison is the name that gives us the 6 wide receivers, all of whom we expect to carry some elite portion to their thesis. When your number 5 is Xavier Worthy, your number 6 is Jordan Addison. I mean, it's worth mentioning that Jordan Addison broke out as a rookie, and the future NFL career for those guys tends to be sterling. He's also someone who came in, unlike, say, a Jaden Reed or a Tank Dell, with a fantastic prospect profile. That's not to say that Reed and Dell hadn't done anything in college. They had. But when you look at the contrast between them and Addison, what that sort of means going forward, it's pretty compelling. So this receiving core is set up to where we could probably just stay with the 6 receivers if we want. We know we're going to need a lot of running backs. We know we're going to need a lot of tight ends in this tight end premium format. You can talk about it from a position of it saves on the wild swings at positions where it's not as helpful, which would be wide receiver. That part you can say, well, it doesn't give you the roster flexibility now if those individual targets, players that maybe could fall and you do actually like at wide receiver, they no longer become good fits. You don't want to wall yourself off from that. But Colm, what I really am wanting here is the ability to take running back, get all of our guys and get the type of 0 RB roster where you do have enough bullets. That's the flexibility that I'm looking to create. That's the balance I'm striving for in this range of this type of draft.
Yeah, 100%. And it might seem strange to say it gives you flexibility when you've added a 6th wide receiver at this point, and to think it's not really, because you're going to need to get those running backs. But what it does, as you mentioned, is bypass those wide receivers that may have question marks on them. And I've mentioned this a lot, that when you get to this point where the wide receiver cliff is and you're looking at the names after, it's very a narrow path to getting your targets that you want. So you have to also get quite a bit of draft luck to take those guys when they come back through to you. And if you miss out on those names, then in those kind of rounds from 12 through 17, like your wide receivers are going to be really struggling to live up to it during the season. This wide receiver core, Shawn, that we've been able to put together, along with Chase Brown and Brooks, I think sets this team up with a fantastic foundation. We're set up to cover bye weeks were set up to, hopefully we don't get them, but sustain injuries, which are going to happen throughout the season. We do have some crossover. We have 2 week 5 buys with St. Brown and Smith. We have 2 week 6 buys, but we're pretty balanced across the board. And we can, like, by the time the draft gets to an end, I don't think that's even going to be a concern here at all for us. Shawn, the drafter that did have Christian McCaffrey and Brandon Knight did take Brock Purdy, so that was something that I had mentioned that was a probable, or not a probable, but a possibility. We'll see now if the drafter who I mentioned that did take Jameson Williams, they've taken Joshua Palmer. We'll see will they take Jared Goff. But I think we have a lot of fallback options. They don't really have to be like for complete stacking purposes, but there's lots of quarterbacks that we'll like throughout it. If we were able to get a second quarterback, though, that we were really positive on, that would also kind of free up some additional roster spots for those tight end positions. And the drafts where you can, like, not have to get to 4, let's say, at QB or tight end, I think it allows you, to fill in those extra positions, like you mentioned, at running back, get those extra bullets to go that way. That drafter does pass on Goff. We'll see if he manages to get back through. We have a number of teams on the way back here with 2 quarterbacks. The one team, Shawn, that is a no QB team so far in this draft is the drafter in 5, who we talked about earlier, and they potentially could shatter some hopes here, but we'll see what happens as it closes back towards us. But I think we have flexibility either way to go in a couple of different directions if that didn't occur. That drafter, Shawn, in 5 did take J.K. Dobbins, and it's one of the earliest spots I've seen him go in these drafts was in the mid-10th round. He's usually going in the 12th round at the moment at the 12:01. So Jared Goff also went, Shawn. So we do get that part taken out. With Goff gone, how are you looking with Tua now going as well? The quarterback's starting to shift. How are you feeling at QB in this draft? Are you willing now to push it a good bit of additional distance would be the way I'd be kind of looking at it. And then how are you looking at this pick in 2 selections time? Are we looking at any additional 0 RB targets? Is there a tight end you like here? What way do you want to play it?
Yeah, I think the only disappointing thing, if you've selected CJ Stroud and you go ahead and risk it on your other QB and don't win, is that Bo Nix has the same bye. So that part isn't ideal. I'm a little bit disappointed in some of these other drafters in that, Kirk Cousins probably gives you the same play, if not a slightly better play. And, you could leave our guy for us, but that's not the way that it works. Caliber's mostly joking about that. I don't have a name that is a must draft right here. My temptation is just to say, let's swing for the fences at running back, get the ball rolling by taking Jalen Wright. Do you prefer a Cole Kmet or a Luke Musgrave instead?
I don't necessarily prefer them, and I would see if they would come back through. I'm interested in running back here. Charbonnet was the other name I was thinking, but we are doing it off the 0 RB list. Is Wright your preference? Are we any concern for the early weak points between those two who might give you early season stuff versus Jonathan Brooks?
No, we're going to go ahead and say that is not a consideration. Colm, I wrote about Zach Charbonnet. He and Jordan Mason were the 2 names I've gotten some pushback on. It's also interesting because I also have received some very strong affirmation on Zach Charbonnet in that Connor, who is a past winner of this tournament, he's got him as one of his highest exposures. So work through a little bit of that balance. I also have Charbonnet quite a bit in a different format. So I don't necessarily need more of him. Jalen Wright looks like, again, the massive winner. I think that when you take him here, you're pricing out some of the full season value, but still not by any stretch the individual game value when we think about winning in week 15, in week 16, in week 17. And I think we can come back and sort of backfill names of players who will give us more production right away.
Yeah, that's very fair. That also rules out Nick Chubb on this roster, but he does get drafted, Shawn. Luke Musgrave did go. I'm interested to see if Kmet gets one more pick to come into it. I'm continuing to look to push the quarterback position here quite a bit. I think we'll see some fallers from some of these veteran names. We can see how it plays out. Charbonnet, who we mentioned, would still be an option that's available. Tyler Algier would be coming into the picture. Chuba Hubbard's kind of ruled out because of the Jonathan Brooks pick, I feel. Komet here feels like a pretty nice pick at tight end, and I've been asked multiple times on these streams that I've done with Connor, am I not concerned about Cole Komet with the news going on? I guess I'm just not. I think that we'll see 2 tight ends using that offense, and I think that we'll see that Komet shows that he is the more talented of the two. Are you feeling more concerned about Komet? Is he something would you be really hoping makes it one more pick to us here? What's your thoughts between him and Everett?
Well, Cole Komet outscored Trey McBride last year.
Does that mean he's pretty good? He's not terrible.
He outscored Jake Ferguson.
So he
outscored Dalton Kincaid.
Sorry, I'm trying to understand this, Shawn. You're telling me that he's not terrible?
I think if there is a takeaway from preseason, it's that any takeaways with Gerald Everett should be used as an example of why you don't look at it that way. Again, famous last words. I think that Jaleel McLaughlin is the locked in, has to be the selection right here. He's probably not that different of a bet than Javonte Williams, and round 12 is an absurd price.
Okay, you don't want to risk it. You don't want to see if you can squeeze him through. He's clicked.
No, I mean, no.
After all the hype we done for Cole Komet, we don't.
Colm, you had asked me about Cole Komet, and I wanted to give the answer, but this is also a situation where Ben and I were drafting a main event the other day. I know that you have been drafting feverishly. You've been traveling. I don't know that you would have had a chance to consume that podcast. I know you did a fantastic job, obviously, editing it. Slightly different things at times. Cole Komet fell to us at tight end 27 in our main event.
I had to check in that if he actually was in fact still with us on this earth, Shawn, on this planet.
Tight end 27.
Yeah.
This is a guy who outscored Jake Ferguson last year, who again, Jake Ferguson, it depends on how you look at it, right? Jake Ferguson had the massive playoff game. That game doesn't not count because it wasn't part of the regular season. But Jake Ferguson went 503.
I'm agreeing.
And maybe a good pick there. And maybe a very good pick there, right? But Cole Komet's fall.
I cannot figure it out. I think you need to take the information in preseason on board. You need to try and digest it. You need to try and use it to your advantage. But I think then there's times where you're just completely jumping the gun. And one of the things that I'm getting completely infuriated by in this draft, Shawn, is the drafter in 5 continues to get these bargains. He takes Cole Komet along with Brock Bowers. So I do say that tongue in cheek, but I could be completely wrong on Cole Komet. But sometimes these narratives, just because we're in the echo chamber of social media and so much news and that available so quickly, I think things just get spiraled out of control. And we see teams where somebody's not playing and it's because they're keeping them in cotton wool for the week 1 opener, and then we see somebody else who's sharing snaps and it's yeah, their career's over, they'll never play again. So we need to balance it out.
They're keeping them in what now?
Cotton wool. What do you call that? Cotton balls.
Okay.
So here we call it cotton wool. If you're trying to really protect something, if you were putting it in a bubble wrap, maybe would be a way you could do it.
Okay.
Is bubble wrap a thing?
I love that. It is a thing. I don't know. Yeah.
You can wrap NFL players in it? No.
I think that's frowned upon. Cole Komet is a 6'6", 262-pound tight end with a 91st percentile explosion.
Sounds pretty good.
Well, again, the whole point is not that he's in any way a lock. The issue is that there are a lot of positives.
So all that to say, Shawn, we were back on the clock, and it was another one of Shawn's priority targets at the running back position. Another Zero RB, candidate, Shawn, we've done a quite splendid job, I have to say. It's almost like we planned it out as to how we would try and draft these running backs later in the draft. We get another rookie. It is Bucky Irvin. You mentioned Jaleel McLaughlin earlier, and we didn't get to talk as much about him, but he is one of my highest drafted running backs. And interestingly enough, him and Devonta are two of the highest that I have drafted, and it's a case of trying to get at least one of them on pretty much every roster. But he can also gives you that front-loaded points. I hope it continues as the season goes along, but to take those picks like Brook and Wright, who you may have to wait that little bit for. Irvin's one that you may have to wait a little bit for too, but I think he can have standalone value early in the season. We are going to be back on the clock in 3 picks. We have more running backs we can target. Kirk Cousins has fallen quite a bit here. You mentioned earlier that Bo Nix is the same bye week as CJ Stroud, who we've already drafted. I was going to mention Geno Smith as a potential option there. He goes as well. What are you thinking about how we address the QB position? And then is there any tight ends going in this range? Ben Sinnott goes in this area. We start to get into a zone where, Mike Gesicki probably in the next round would be an option. He's somebody I've drafted quite a bit of. Greg Dulcich comes up then. We'll have to talk about him, of course. But what are you thinking here? One pick away is the direction you want to go. We now have those 5 running backs, but we can continue to hammer that position. I'm expecting that's the way you're going to want to go, Shawn, with one of the RBs I know that you absolutely adore heading into this season.
Yeah, it would be hard to pass on Braylon Allen here. At the same time, we are up to 5 running backs at this point. The price is getting flagrantly absurd on Kirk Cousins. We do already have, I guess I've used flagrantly absurd previously in this draft. We've gotten a few situations that have been, that borderline insanity, which you love to see. You love to see. Pick your guys. If Kirk Cousins is not your guy, and that's true for 11 other people, we haven't drafted him either, right? So
he's now, though, Shawn, 3 rounds after ADP.
He is. And it's hard to believe that he wouldn't have the type of season that helps you make it through. And we want to be in. And then if CJ Stroud goes on that run to win us the tournament with the other players that we have, then we're all set. I guess this seems like a Kirk Cousins pick.
I was going to say, this is a heart or a head pick, Shawn. I think Kirk Cousins is the head pick. Braylon Allen is the heart pick.
Yeah, well, one of the things is I do want to take Kamani Vidal as well. His bye works better for us. He should be available when we get back. It makes it a little bit trickier, perhaps, to take both of those guys, although we can continue to add to running back as we move along here and balance the late picks. Again, we're set at receiver, so we have some flexibility. Will Levis goes the pick right after ours.
Levis right at ADP as well, just to note. But Cousins there, when it gets, that's, if there's a point, Shawn, you're going to draft him. Obviously, if you had a Pets team, it would be more appetizing. But if there's a point, you're going to draft him on a team that we're starting to get into an area where that secondary QB is a big help. You're getting a starter there at that price. I think I would jump at that. I would have been interested in Geno too, but the fall of Cousins there was very interesting to get on the roster. Feel like it must have been pretty tough there for you to pass up on Allen, but you did mention some of the roster considerations that would make you do that. You mentioned Vidal as well. Obviously, we touched on Bo Nix. Now that we have a second QB in Kirk Cousins, are you thinking 2 QBs? Are you still thinking about adding another one later? And, would you be interested then in going back to the Bo Nix selection? And I mentioned as well that this is an area where there's quite a few tight ends that I think are interesting as well. So you're hoping to get Vidal as one of those picks. Tyrone Tracy would be a potential additional fallback at running back. Braylon Allen hasn't gone yet, but we are 9 picks away from our selection. What are you kind of hoping from this next turn as we look to kind of put the finishing touches on this roster with 6 picks to go?
So if it gets to us in the 15 with Juwan Johnson still available, he would be below ADP. Things are kind of turning in the right direction for him. They have a massive target void after Chris Olave. his individual profile is not particularly appetizing, but he has had spike games in the past. He does have that receiver transition element to him where Ben has made some great arguments in favor of him being someone who fits that late breakout type of mold. But I think when you get into this range, when you can draft tight ends who've previously had some spike weeks and also are a volume play. I mean, this is basically the Tyler Conklin play, basically the Jake Ferguson play, just without having to be as right about it because of the price. Now, he does go at his ADP at the turn there, so we won't have to debate or worry about whether we want to make that selection. One of the things that I'm looking at here, I don't think that we need to draft a third QB. I think ideally you would almost stay away from it. At the same time, it's kind of fun to think about a team that has McLaughlin, that has your guy, Greg Dulcich. And then if Bo Nix were to...
Shawn, don't set that up. You cannot set up that you're actually thinking about drafting him and then you like passing him for four rounds in a row before he gets drafted by somebody else.
I know one of the jokes going around is that Greg Dulcich could be the starter if the first two Denver Broncos tight ends get hurt.
Yeah.
All of that gives me, some continued pause when it comes to drafting Greg Dulcich. But we're getting into the range where we're going to have to draft some bad tight ends. And so if you draft bad tight ends, you get what you deserve to an extent, right? We're going to get what we deserved at tight end. We didn't take Cole Kmet. We are going to pay the price. Kamani Vidal also goes in that last selection.
Yeah. You know who hasn't gone though, Shawn, is Braylon Allen. Benson not goes. He's somebody, Shawn, that we talked a lot about in rookie draft season. Drafted him in a lot of dynasty leagues. I find myself not drafting him as much in season long in best ball formats. Is he somebody that you think should be getting added to rosters as much as possible? I mentioned it, Mike Gesicki. He's somebody that I find in this range that's very interesting. You mentioned Johnson as well. He can be added in. There's a couple of interesting tight ends, but I find myself clicking on Gesicki quite a bit, and now Dulce is just getting pulled up into this range. I'm still drafting some of him. What's your feeling on Sonat at this point? He's obviously already off the board here, but you clicking on him?
Yeah, at tight end 25, I think he makes sense. That's where his ADP has been the last few days. It's in a group with Smith and Okonkwo, neither of whom has gone. He should be above them, and he does go above them in this draft. Certainly, I think you can put him with Otten and Fant. I think you can put him with Henry and Likely. And that's the reason we're not drafting tight ends in that range.
Yeah, that's fair. Allen went 2 picks before us, Shawn. So we are going to be up. Tyrone Tracy could fit in here. I keep saying it, Shawn. Mike Gesicki could fit in. If we were looking to take a real swing here for QB, I'd be waiting for this for the next round to see what happens. But we get into Justin Fields' ADP. Xavier Legette will be a wide receiver option. I think there's too many quarterbacks to even consider the QB options here. There's a bunch of them that go in this range. I'm kind of between Tracy and Gesicki. I feel like you may not be as interested in Gesicki as I would be. And if the reason that you're not interested in Gesicki is because you're all in on Greg Dulcich, that's fine by me. Do you want to take Tracy here and see what comes back? It would be a third week 11 buy at running back, but we would also be up to 6 running backs as well. So we would still have 3 options hopefully available.
Yeah, there are some deeper names still at running back who probably do the same thing as Tracy. So if you're leaning toward Mike Gesicki with this pick, I think it is time that we start addressing tight end. He probably has zero floor, and yet...
He has a huge sit-in, though. I still do think that. As much as I was out on Gesicki, I was thinking I won't be buying that ticket to get back on the Mike Gesicki train. I feel like at this point I am, conducting that train, Shawn, with Mike Gesicki exposure. This is a range I was mentioning, not having Sonat, but it is an area where Hubbard goes, Herbert goes, Lloyd, Braylon Allen, Kamani Vidal, and then even Tank Bigsby. You get Bo Nix goes in this range. Mike Gesicki, Dulcich. Tyrone Tracy, I mentioned. It's almost like this is an area where you nearly want to exclusively be getting Bo Nix or 2 running backs. And that's one of the reasons as well. I think I don't have as much exposure to Sinat as well. I don't think I mentioned Marshawn Lloyd. He went 1 pick before we took Cousins. So it's a very rich area to be getting those running backs. I wouldn't be opposed to, if it worked out on the way back here, getting Dulcich as another tight end on this roster and seeing how that played out. Tracy did go 2 picks after. Adam Thielen went 1 pick after. I feel like we may be looking to get up to 4 tight ends instead of 2 QBs, and then that would leave us with an additional 3 picks left. How are you seeing this roster play out? And like, do you think you're happy to get a 3rd quarterback and be at that? Or are you looking to add a 4th for this particular tight end premium format? At wide receiver, are you looking to add any names? We're up to the 6 that we talked about earlier. And then at running back, how many more do we want to add into this roster? So we kind of have the 5 spots. How do you want to address them?
We need 2 more tight ends. I do think there are a variety of fun names. I have Theo Johnson in the queue, even though I am skeptical about both that offense and his prospect profile. You're betting on athleticism and the volume path with him. Those are 2 things that make sense to bet on, right? So at this price, you can go in that direction. There's also, even though you say we'd like to have seen more in college, there's that black box element to it where he could end up being anything. That is appealing. I think that on a team that doesn't have Bowers, Michael Mayer is a fun pick. I think that Jatavian Sanders should start being a pretty priority type of pick really late. When you get into these drafts, you want to come away with him. So I think we have options. Somebody from the queue just went. Who just went there? Jordan Mason goes.
Jordan Mason.
And then when I look at the late picks, if Justin Fields continues to be there later at a spot where we don't have other names we like, I enjoy throwing him onto the back. You never know what score, what individual player you're going to need to win the whole thing. My understanding, Colm, from reading this morning, and you can probably set me straight on this, but it sounded like where we are with the Steelers quarterback competition is that they're going to actually have some legit practices this week, and then they're going to decide. So with a week and a half before the season, this is a good time to start seriously practicing and figure out who the key person on your team is going to be. It
sounds like it's a good idea to try and figure out who's going to be your starting player in 10 days time. It sounds like something you would do in the NFL if you're trying to plan to win, but Shawn, I don't know. It does feel like some of the stuff with the Steelers, and maybe it does turn around and Wilson ends up getting it. It feels like a lot of this is done to kind of massage the emotions or the feelings that Russell Wilson may have, if he's not the starter. So let's make it look like I could be completely wrong. Are we back to the who's winning win sprints for the Seahawks job between Drew Lock and Geno Smith? Are we back to those days? Is that where we're at? We are back on the clock, though. I know that for sure, Shawn. Are you going to get Dulcich here? What are you going to do? I'm going to leave this up to you. I don't want to push it. I know Kendray's at the top of the queue here.
Yeah, I do like the Kendray pick. He's so unpopular right now. He will probably come back. My question would be, there seems like there's a lot of Tucker Kraft enthusiasm at this exact moment. I think he's got more upside than Dulcich. He would probably be my preferred pick here. But you tell me which one of these guys?
Well, the reason I would say, there's a round of ADP difference. Is it a case that we don't get him through?
Well, my preference would probably be to have Kraft and Sanders as the last 2 tight ends. But I did go with your pick, as I said I was going to. It is Greg Dulcich.
We're into a 3 tight end build now, Shawn. That's all we need to know.
Well...
I say that.
My thought was that we are now potentially into a 5 tight end. Which,
oh my gosh!
Again,
so we've burnt a roster spot completely.
We didn't burn it. I mean, we still want those guys to score from it. You need to have tight end scoring in this format. I think we have the other positions handled, especially after we take Kendray Miller in round 18. Colm, this draft has a feel of one that is going to go Tucker Kraft in 17, Kendray Miller in 18. Jatavian Sanders in 19, and then we may just pass the 20th round pick because
not going to get Will
so
Shipley.
Confident.
I don't. Yeah.
Will Shipley is currently last couple days is in round 17.
Mm-hmm. Moving up. Him and Kendry are right beside each other, kind of in that range and that's based on FFPC site ADP. It's kind of a case where that's obviously due to Miller's cratering ADP at this point. So we'll see if either of them make their way back. I think they would be interesting. You mentioned Theo Johnson as well, Shawn being in the queue. Tucker Kraft would be really nice to get back to us if that was the case. Justin Fields did get drafted. When we take the Dulcich pick, Shawn, the next pick after it is Colby Parkinson. Then Zach Ertz has gone a couple of picks later to the Ben Sinnott drafter. I think you get into a range here where you're like shooting for the upside. You mentioned Sanders obviously fits that perfectly. I think Kraft fits that perfectly. Mayer fits that as well. Yeah, I think I'm interested that you mentioned the 5 option, but we'll see. I think we can go kind of now best option available here as things work their way back through. The one thing I did mention that we didn't go back to was wide receiver. You think we're completely good? We're done at wide receiver. I feel like we're probably there. I'd say like Tolbert's probably a name I would be interested in, but I think those last 4 spots are all non-wide receivers.
I think we can execute a best player available once we get that 4th tight end. The best player may be, especially if we consider the weakness of tight end 2, tight end 3, tight end 4, may be a 5th receiver. You had mentioned Jalen Tolbert. He does go, as you say that, and does go quite a bit after he probably should have gone. And again, individual drafters are going to have different preferences. We could see different workload in week 1, different route shares, all of that. Right now, to me, it seems like Tolbert should be going ahead of Dortch, ahead of Bateman, sadly ahead of Mims, probably ahead of Leggett, sadly probably ahead of Wandale, certainly ahead of Demarcus Robinson with some of the young guys who are generating buzz there. Ahead of Demario Douglas, ahead of Michael Wilson, ahead of Josh Downs.
Shawn, I'm making the call now. The drafter in 5 is a RotoViz subscriber. I'm pretty confident of that.
Tucker Kraft comes off the board.
So that makes it a little bit interesting here, this pick coming up. Yeah, I was pretty confident that he would come through, Shawn, and he did not. That makes Mayer and Sanders priority picks. They probably come back through, but there's a case then that do we want to get one of them or do we want to get both of them? Mayer and Sanders both generally going in the 19th round, so I think we certainly would want to take one of them in these next 2 picks, which will be in the 17th and then the 1805 for the second one. It is also a range where I think if you want to take that Kendry Miller pick, we probably should be deciding on that over these next 2 picks. And Mayer goes as well. Mayer went 1 pick before us.
I thought he was a pretty strong possibility to get back to us in 19. That's where his ADP is. Sanders, I think, is a potential back in 19 type of play.
I'm willing to risk it if you want to risk it, but I'm looking at the teams here at the back end. So there's 2 tight ends. Every team has 2 tight ends on this wrap. So I would expect some more tight ends to go in these next 8 picks, but I think that we do have some very interesting running back options if you want to go that direction.
Yeah, we probably need to dip back into the list and take Will Shipley here.
Come on down.
I don't know. I mean, I just don't have a strong enough conviction on those tight ends to take them. It's also the case where either Johnson or Sanders would be a double up on that week 11 bye.
Yeah.
which is not necessarily
That's what.
when you're
That's
having
why
to.
Kraft would have worked perfect. If we had got Kraft, we would have had our mayor. We would have had the balance across the board, which would have been nice.
So Drake May goes with the pick right after ours. That team is going aggressively young with Caleb Williams and Drake May. As you mentioned, one of the 2 tight end builds is going to go with Theo Johnson. The next one is going to go with Dawson Knox. We get a Daniel Jones pick. QB, I believe, now is completely wiped out. The only remaining starting quarterback is one Gardner Minshew.
We're one pick away, Shawn. I guess the question comes down to if Sanders comes through here. Is it a case that we're okay to go with 3 tight ends and then take a Kendry Miller, for example? Roschon Johnson would be here as well. Estime. Is it a case that we're good to risk Sanders over those running backs? I guess I am, but at the same time, in this format, it's good to have those additional tight ends.
It probably is a Sanders pick. I would really like to have Kendry Miller or Estime here. It would add some more punch to the wide receiver or to the running back group, which at this point is Chase Brown, Jonathan Brooks, Jalen Wright, Jaleel McLaughlin, Bucky Irving, and Will Shipley. Yeah, I'm willing to go either direction. When you take Trey McBride where we took him, you are saying that you think he's going to really score.
Yeah.
So, and you chuckle because we don't have to decide. Jatavian Sanders goes 1 pick ahead of us there. Everything you were talking about with the 2 tight end groups to that side of us, all 4 teams did take a tight end. We did get wiped out. It's a relief. Now we can take Miller or Estime. Which guy is it?
You're the 0 RB guy, Shawn. Which one are we taking? I have a lot of Miller. I have very little Estime based on the amount of Jaleel McLaughlin. The one thing I would pause on Estime if you want is we have got Jaleel on this roster. If you don't want to have the second Broncos running back. But I don't have much of him based on drafting Devonta and McLaughlin, so I'm happy to take him if that's the direction you want to go.
Yeah, I think he fills this team out nicely. There's certainly no guarantee we expect Javonte Williams to score a ton of points, and yet you put Estime in there. He can score in different weeks. The McLaughlin, he could be the 15, 16, 17 winner. In that type of scenario, you have a 0 RB team where maybe McLaughlin gets you there, and then Estime takes the reins and wins you the $300,000. I have enough Kendry Miller that
same.
but I think it works to go this route. The other thing I'm thinking is, again, Kendry is so unpopular. I wouldn't completely disregard the possibility that he might be our 19th round pick, which would be a fun way to get that running back room really rocking for the season.
Yeah, so Kendry has been going as running back 64 in the late 17th in recent days. So his stock has obviously fallen dramatically. Getting him in the 19th might be a stretch, but we did obviously get Kirk Cousins quite a bit after ADP. Shawn, the question I'm going to highlight here for people who are maybe listening in and wondering, we're thinking about a 0 RB roster, back end season production from rookies and things like that. So we have Chase Brown, Jaleel McLaughlin, who are non-rookie picks. So we have Jonathan Brooks, we have Jalen Wright, Bucky Irving, Will Shipley, and Estime. So out of our running back room at this present moment, there is 5 running backs out of 7 that are rookies. Why should people not be afraid to do that? And what are the kind of concerns? What are the pros then looking ahead as to why this can work on a 0 RB roster? I find people who maybe are new to 0 RB, if you do wait on running back, they're looking to get those veteran names who they think, well, I'll get the points in week 1, week 2, week 3. They're not thinking I'm going to win my league or I'm going to win a massive tournament based on these running backs who are undervalued now, leading their way into meaningful roles and then being smash plays down the stretch. So I guess why should people be as aggressive at the rookie running backs and like we have here? And have we been too aggressive in this draft?
I think you have to take each draft as a separate thing and simply say who are the best picks when we're on the clock. And if they're rookies, then they're rookies. Having said that, if you just read one article this week, I mean, sub to the site, read Michael Dudenmer's article about if you get this group of rookie running backs through, their back-weighted production is going to help you crush fantasy leagues, win fantasy tournaments. Again, the sort of note right off the bat there, the big asterisk is if you can get these guys through, that's a big part of your question. But that's also the reason that we went ahead and took Chase Brown where we did. It's the reason that we went ahead and took McLaughlin where we did. We think that both of those guys who are second-year players, and you want to get that breakout. At a certain point, anybody who is old enough to not fit that youth concern category is old enough to know what they are. And if they were something that you wanted to have in fantasy, they would simply be too expensive, right? You can't have it both ways. If you're going to draft a zero RB team, you're going to have to take some risk, which means you have to lean into the guys who are going to make the leap. Anybody who's already there, anybody who's old enough, they no longer have the upside to do anything for you. So we're drafting a lot of guys because we want to be humble about it. We know that each individual pick is likely to miss, not just not give you a ton of points, but flat out miss. But the group together, I think, works very, very nicely. That's why you should consider zero RB in this format. Colm, we're up. Do you see anything interesting here?
This is a very tricky part, obviously, here in the last two rounds, and you're trying to see what options do become available here. There's players, Shawn, you would hope to be here that are no longer here. Dameon Pierce is here. Hyatt's here. I added Malik Washington as a potential 20th round pick at wide receiver. And then, we've talked about if we were going to add a tight end. It is pretty wiped out. The only name that I still have some hope for down here, well, I have some hope for Jelani Woods, but we look at a Daniel Bellinger. I still think there's a chance that he could win out in that role as the season goes along. But yeah, it's not a very exciting area of the draft. If we wanted another running back, Pierce could fit. I kind of like the two wide receivers here if we wanted to add them in. Now that we're up to the 7 wide running backs here, I don't know if we essentially need to get 8. What do you want to do? We get to 8. Is that the pick you wanted to make, or did I just talk for too long?
Well, we did get down to 1 second, so we had to pick someone. I think both
of the wide receivers come back through as another part of it.
Yeah, I think Hyatt will come back. I really like him as the final piece. He gives us a week 11 by receiver. He gives us that vertical ability. Dameon Pierce does provide a little bit of that veteran element if drafters are looking for that. Now, again, the flip side is that the reason why a player who was so dynamic as a rookie is still available here is that he was absolutely awful last year and he has struggled in the preseason. Now, the coaches come out and said, we got a block for him, right? I mean, you're not going to be able to deal with what he's dealing with in the backfield and gain any yards as a rusher. The concern has been that he is not a good fit for the current rushing scheme. With that being the case, you would have appreciated them doing more in the offseason than adding a replacement level starter like Joe Mixon and adding a player with a lot of injury issues in Cam Akers. You look at those two guys, because those are the other two sort of relevant names on that depth chart, you are thinking, okay, if things break the right way in week 2, week 3, Pierce could end up as not just somebody who's out there, but in that Houston Texans offense and with a guy who, we don't want to get that far ahead of ourselves. He wasn't unreal by any stretch as a rookie either. And yet someone who does have a production background as a rookie, someone who's playing in this offense, if they have a path to touches, which he does, then, round 19 is not chock full of automatic players. Colm, the other name I was going to mention to you, and it doesn't look like he's gone, so I'm not sure if I thought I put him into the queue and got distracted or what happened there. But
okay.
What's your response to Kansas City Chiefs running back Carson Steele?
The Chiefs running backs here have got interesting. They've all got a little bit of pub over the last couple of weeks at different points, and you're into a situation now where they're pretty much all available here in the 20th round. Edwards-Helaire's available, Deneric Prince is available, Carson Steele's available. They're all available. So one of these guys, there's a potential for a massive beneficial run for them. You're the Kansas City Chiefs guy as well, Shawn, so I'll defer to you. If you're saying, what do I think of him? I'm assuming that you feel like he is now the potential number 2 in that offense. You're looking to get access to that Kansas City Chiefs offense in whatever way you can. If you can get it at this discounted price, that's intriguing. We did talk, though, about the wide receivers. I would go back and mention that. If you want to take Carson Steele, I'll go with that. Garendo is there, obviously, at running back. We can only pick one of these names. There is a lot of these interesting names at the back end. Is Steele the way you want to go? Do you feel he's a steal in the 20th round? So good.
I love the fact that you couldn't resist the low-hanging fruit there. And as a result, we are going to take Carson Steele in round 20.
We're going to break their construction explorer, Shawn, if we win with feels like a 15 running back roster.
I do think that it recommends taking 9 running backs. 9 running backs in all of your drafts. That is the key. When we post this at the end of the season, when you re-release the audio, folks will be like, well, I mean, they almost lost it. They forgot what they were doing and took Dameon Pierce in round 19, but they resisted Jalen Hyatt. They came back with the tournament winner, Carson Steele, in 20. That was the $300,000.
It could be. And that's the one thing we talked about at the start when we started off in the way we did with Amon-Ra, St. Brown, Deebo Samuel, Devonta Smith, Stefon Diggs, Xavier Worthy, and Jordan Addison, was giving us the freedom and flexibility to attack the running back position with a lot of picks. Now, Shawn, I would imagine that I'm correct in saying this is the first time we've ever gone as heavy then in those rounds at running back, but because we got the discount on CJ Stroud, then we got a discount on Kirk Cousins, that allowed us to feel pretty confident at the quarterback position that we could give those additional roster spots to the running back position. For example, if we had a pass on Kirk Cousins, you get down to, in this draft, it wouldn't have made sense to have your second quarterback be Bo Nix, but if you start to get down to a 3 quarterback build, you're losing out on one of those spots at that point. And we probably did want to get to 4 tight ends. Shawn had even mentioned the potential of 5, but we did just get caught on the Tucker Kraft, Michael Mayer, and then Sanders selections that we would have potentially made. I guess I'm optimistic in terms of the range of outcomes. I feel like there's a floor there for Mike Gesicki, and then I think there is ceiling weeks for him as well. So there could be some of those weeks, even with bye weeks to the wide receivers, that we get some of those tight ends in the flex. And I think that both of those guys should be getting priced up at that level. Kind of, maybe not in this draft. I feel like Tyler Conklin is quite expensive overall, but in that Isaiah Likely, Hunter Henry range, they should be at least 2 rounds higher. Where Noah Fant goes, I feel like Musgrave should be in a higher tier. Cole Kmet, who we talked about, and this should be higher, but they should be all a little bit closer to where TJ Hawkinson is going. Now, I might just be overly optimistic on that, but I think that they might be 2 players we look back on that are mispriced, and that allows us then to have the 3 tight end build. And I'm quite comfortable with the 3 guys that we have there. If I was building out this roster solo, if I got to a flat point, I might have looked for, and I would have done the same as Shawn was talking about here, look for Sanders in the 19th. Well, that wasn't possible. None of the players went to their ADP that we thought that we were actually targeting. So we kind of got left in a position where there's the 3 tight ends, but I wouldn't have been really looking to add those other tight ends at the prices that they went for in terms of us taking them around earlier. So I'm pretty comfortable, Shawn, but I'll read out the list of running backs. It is Chase Brown, Jonathan Brooks, Jalen Wright, Jaleel McLaughlin, Bucky Irvin, Will Shipley, Audrey Estime, Dameon Pierce, and Carson Steele, loaded up on rookies, ready to go. I think we should be able to fill. I'm talking about filling the flex with tight ends or wide receivers. Shawn, this could be a draft where we're just filling the flexes with running backs. We've got so much talent there.
The first 9 running back build for RotoViz overtime. Yeah, you got to stick those running backs in the flex with the way that we have built this. Colm, it's an absolute blast. Thank you for putting this team together. I've got high hopes.
Yeah, this was a fun one. It's a bit different at the back end, but our goal was to add as many of the zero RB targets to the roster as we could, and we were able to add a number of them. If you haven't checked out the full articles up on rotoviz.com, I will link them in the show notes. You can check that out. If you wanted to sign up to read them, if you're not subscribed, you can use the code RBRadio2024 at checkout to head on over and read those. You'll save 10% on your 1-year RotoViz pass, get access to all the content and tools up on the site, and that'll obviously be having content throughout the NFL season. But Shawn, I think it's a fun one. We'll see how it works out. We'll hopefully do a few more of these before the season is kicking off. You can draft over at the FFPC in the $125 Best Ball Tournament. As Shawn mentioned earlier, $300,000 top prize in that one. Their website is myffpc.com. My name is Colm Kelly. You can follow me on Twitter at @OverToMarlin. My co-host is Shawn Siegele. Check out all of his work up on rotoviz.com. And until we are back, have a good one.